The day my husband stood in my own doorway, his mistress watching from my own couch, pointed at the door and said, "Pack your things." He said it with his full chest, with confidence, with the kind of authority that only lives in a man who has confused access with ownership. I looked at him. I looked at her. I looked around that living room, the floors I had chosen, the furniture I had sourced, the walls that had my fingerprints inside them long before he ever had a key. Then I looked back at him and I smiled. He forgot whose name was on the papers. That mansion he was standing in with his chest out, his mistress on my couch, he forgot that every document, every title, every paper that mattered, my maiden name. My maiden name. The one I had before he arrived. The one I kept after he proposed. The one that sits on every document that matters. He wanted 50-50? Fine. The papers say 100% and they have my name. That was the day he made the most expensive mistake of his life. The day I froze Roman's account, I was wearing my favorite yellow dress. Not because I planned it that way. I just woke up that morning, looked in my wardrobe and thought, today feels like yellow. Today feels like sunshine. Today feels like the last day of a very long, very expensive lesson. I ironed that dress slowly. I made my tea. I sat by the window of my own house and watched the sunrise over Lagos like a woman who had absolutely nothing to worry about. Because I didn't. Not anymore. But let me not get ahead of myself. Because to understand what that morning meant, you first have to understand the dinner party, the glass, the laugh, the words that a man said about me while I was sitting 3 seats away in a restaurant I had paid for, on a birthday party I had planned, surrounded by friends I had never met before he brought them into my life. Let me take you back, all the way back, to where this story actually starts, not where it ends. I built my company with my hands and my head and 14 years of mornings that started before 5 a.m. Freya Ose Construction, my name, my sweat, my everything. By the time I was 38, I had a company handling commercial builds across 3 states, 2 properties in Lekki and 1 in Abuja, a team of 62 people and a reputation in the industry that made men twice my age sit up properly when I entered a room. I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you this so you understand exactly what was on the table when Roman sat down across from me. I met him on a project meeting. He was the senior project manager from a mid-sized firm that tendered for one of our subcontracts. He walked in with his structured brief, asked 3 questions that showed he had actually read our specifications, and followed up with a detailed email within the hour. I noticed. Not in a romantic way, in a professional way. The way you notice someone who seems to actually understand the work. That was the first trap. He had studied the work because he had studied me. His colleagues knew that he earned moderately. Nothing wrong with that. But what his colleagues also knew, and what I did not know for a very long time, was that Roman had been 2 months behind his rent the year we met. His car was 3 payments from being recovered. He had a vision board in his apartment. I found this out later from someone who had been to his old place. And on that vision board was a printout of my company profile from our website. Not my face, my company profile. I was a target before I was a person to him. But I didn't know that yet. What I knew was that he was sharp and consistent, and he laughed at the right moment, and he never once made me feel like my success intimidated him, which, if you have ever been a successful woman in Lagos, you know, is rarer than any diamond ring. So when he asked me to dinner 3 months later, I said yes. And when he proposed 14 months after that, in front of my board members, my senior staff, and 3 of my most important clients, at my own company's annual dinner, I said yes to that too. Looking back, the audience was never for me. It was for him. He needed witnesses to the beginning so nobody could question how deeply embedded he was by the end. He sees that now, in that yellow dress with my cold tea. But then I just thought it was love. The first day of our marriage was the year I learned what the word merging can really mean. It started small. His lease was ending and it made sense for him to move into mine. Of course, we were married. His car needed upgrading and I bought him one because we are partners and partners invest in each other, right? His farm was downsizing and I offered him a senior operations role in my company because why waste good talent and because I trusted him completely. Each of these decisions felt like love at the time. Each of them was a transfer. Roman was good at the role. I want to be fair about that. He was organized, he was presentable, and he carried himself in client meetings like someone who belonged there. But the problem was, he began to believe his own performance. He began introducing himself at industry events as a co-founder, not an employee, not my husband, a co-founder. The first time I heard it, I corrected him privately afterwards. Babe, I said carefully, co-founder is a specific term. It has legal meaning. I think you mean senior operations director. He looked at me with this smile, patient, like I was a child who had said something technically correct but socially tone deaf. He said, people don't want to hear titles. They want to understand contribution. I contribute, so I stay co-founder. Relax. I relaxed because I loved him and because I was busy, and because in the grand architecture of everything I was managing, this felt like a small brick. Small bricks. That is how walls are built. His new friends began appearing around this time, a whole circle of people I had never met, none of whom seemed to have known him before me. They were nice enough, presentable, they came to dinners, they laughed at his jokes, and they spoke about him with a kind of reverence that I now understand was constructed. He had retired his old friends the way you retire inconvenient evidence. His old circle, the ones who remembered the rent arrears and the repossession threat and the visual board with my company profile, those friends slowly stopped being invited anywhere. Too busy, he would stay. We grew apart. What he meant was, they know too much. His new friends only knew Roman, who drove my car, had operated my company, and stood in rooms that my name had built. To them, he was self-made. He had simply never corrected them. I asked him once, casually, over dinner, your old friend Kemi called the office looking for you. I didn't know you two had lost touch. He shrugged. Some people stay stuck, he said. I don't have time for people who can't grow. I nodded, moved on, filed it in the back of my mind under things that didn't feel right, but hadn't proven themselves wrong. I had a company to run. I had flaws to break. I had a life to build. I didn't have time to investigate my own husband. That, I would later realize, was exactly what he was counting on. Let me tell you about the dinner party. It was Roman's 36th birthday. I booked Nero, one of the best restaurants in the island. Private dining room, 40 guests, live jazz quartet, a 5-course menu I personally reviewed with the chef. I organized everything down to the name cards. Halfway through the 3rd course, someone at the far end of the table, one of Roman's curated new friends, raised a glass and asked him how he had built so much in such a short time. Roman swelled his wine, settled into the question like a man who had been waiting for it. He said, you know how it is. Smart decisions, good timing, the right moves. Everyone nodded. I smiled from my seat, 3 seats away. And someone else said, and of course, the right woman beside you. Roman smiled, a different smile, the kind that has a private joke living inside it. Yes, he said. He paused. Then he lowered his voice, but not enough. Although I always had to be careful with her type. The table tilted slightly. Someone asked what he meant. Ambitious women in Lagos, he said, almost fondly. You have to know what you're working with. Is she building with you or positioning herself? Classic gold digger energy. Some of them. I just made sure I stayed ahead of it. The table laughed. Comfortable, easy laughter. The kind that comes when everyone trusts the speaker. I was 3 seats away. I heard every syllable. I picked up my glass. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my water. I don't drink alcohol, a detail he always found embarrassing at events. I smiled at the woman sitting across from me and asked her about her renovation project in Ikoya. Inside, something very old and very quiet closed permanently. Not in a broken way, in a decided way. The way a CEO closes a bad investment file. Not with tears, with a date stamp. I did not leave. I did not confront him. I finished that dinner like the professional I am. I thanked the shift personally. I said goodbye to 40 people whose names I had written on name cards with my own hand. I drove home. I said nothing. Roman talked all the way. He said it was a great night. He said the food was excellent. He said his friends really liked me. I said, that's nice, babe. And I thought, I'm going to need my own lawyer. Her name was Zara. She arrived 3 months after the dinner party. And I want to be precise about the sequence because the sequence matters. I didn't discover the dinner party and then investigate and then find Zara. No. Zara arrived while I was still in the filing phase. Still cataloging, still building the case in the quiet courtroom of my own mind. Roman told me about how on a Sunday evening, casually, the way you mentioned you've rearranged the furniture. He said, I found someone for the business development role. She's good. I've already processed her contract. I put down my fork. You processed a contract without my sign-off? He looked up. Patient smile again. You are in Abuja for the Kano project handover. We needed someone quickly. The Agungu deal can't wait. I looked at him for a long moment. Send me her CV, I said. He will introduce me properly tomorrow, he said, going back to his phone. He never sent the CV. Zara was sharp. That was the dangerous part. She wasn't the obvious kind of threat, the kind you can point to and say, that woman is a problem. She was professional, punctual, and prepared for every meeting. She made herself useful in ways that were genuinely hard to argue with. But I am a construction woman. I have been reading foundations my entire career. I know when something looks solid on the surface and has been built on compromised ground. The signs were architectural. The way she laughed at Roman's jokes before he finished them, not because they were funny early, but because she already knew the punchline. The way she once referred to his mother as Mama B, a nickname used only by people who had sat in his mother's kitchen and eaten her food. The way Roman's shadow, which he no longer shared freely with me, seemed to be perfectly known to Zara at all times. I asked him once, measured, no accusation in my voice, how does Zara know your mother's nickname? He didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't miss a breath. He said, I must have mentioned it at some point. That steadiness, that practiced unshakable steadiness, that was the thing that told me everything I needed to know. Liars who flinch can be caught in the moment. Liars who are steady have been rehearsing for the confrontation. They are not reacting to being caught. They are executing a prepared script. Roman had a prepared script, which meant this had been going on long enough to need one. I did not react. I nodded. I said, okay. And that evening, I called my lawyer, a woman named BC, who had been my personal legal counsel since the company's 3rd year. I said, I need you to do something quietly for me. Pull every document Roman has touched in the last 18 months. Every contract amendment, every structural change, every signature page, everything. BC was quiet for a second. How quickly do you need it? I said, last week. She said, give me 10 days. I said, you have 7. She came back in 6. I was in my office when she arrived that quiet Wednesday afternoon. She closed the door behind her and sat down across my desk and placed a folder between us and looked at me the way doctors look at patients before they say the word. I opened the folder. I read it slowly. Every page. 3 new business entities registered in the last 14 months, Roman as sole director of all 3, 2 of them holding operational rights over divisions of my company that represented 60% of active revenue. A 3rd entity, registered in Abuja, listed as the primary contractor on 4 of my 5 current government projects. His name on my work, on my contract, on the business I had built before he knew my surname. And at the bottom of the registration documents for the 3rd entity, the signature of the lawyer who had processed them. Tunde Ade, Zara's cousin. I confirmed it in 11 minutes on LinkedIn. I closed the folder. I sat very still for a moment. Then I said to BC, is there anything else? She hesitated, which told me yes. She slid a second, smaller envelope across the desk. Inside were pictures, printed, dated, time-stamped. Roman and Zara, a property in Chevron, a residential apartment, the kind you furnish when you plan to stay, a woman carrying a toddler on her hip, a man with his arm around her shoulder. The man was Roman. The toddler looked about 18 months old. I checked the company's expense ledger that BC had pulled. The rent for that apartment had been paid every single month for 2 years from my company's operational account. My company had been funding his second life, his other woman, his hidden child for 2 years, while I signed documents and attended meetings and worked 14-hour days and came home to a man who swelled his wine and called me a gold digger. I sat in that office for a very long time after BC left. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I am not saying I was not strong to cry. I am saying I had already grieved this marriage at that dinner table 3 months earlier when something ancient and quiet had closed inside me. By the time the photographs are on the desk, the mourning was already done. What was left was just strategy. And I am very, very good at strategy. I went home that evening and cooked dinner. Jollof rice, Roman's favorite, the long, slow one with the smoky bottom that takes 40 minutes and a lot of patience. He came in at 7:30, tie loosened, phone in hand, and stopped in the hallway when he smelled the food. "Oh," he said, surprised, "you cooked?" I said, "Sit down, food is almost ready." We sat across from each other and we ate. And he talked about a meeting and a client and something about a new project in Port Harcourt. I listened. I asked follow-up questions. I laughed at one of his stories. I watched him lie to my face across a table I had bought, in a kitchen I had designed, in a house that had my name on the deed. And I felt nothing except the clean, cold satisfaction of a woman who already knows exactly what she's about to do. The next morning, I was in BC's office at 7:45. By 9 a.m., the accounts were frozen, all of them. Personal, business, joint. By 11 a.m., a legal challenge had been filed against all 3 entities Roman had registered. Fraudulent appropriation of company assets, forgery of operational authority. The documents were airtight. BC had made sure of that. By 3 p.m., Zara received a termination letter, hand-delivered by our head of security in the main lobby of the building, in front of 12 people. I specifically requested the lobby. I want to be honest about that. By 4 p.m., Roman's access card stopped working at every entry point of the building. He called my phone 11 times, between 5 and 10. I answered on the 12th. "Roman," I said, "the accounts are frozen. The entities are under legal challenge. Your access has been revoked. BC will be in contact regarding the full extent of the legal action. Please do not come home tonight." Freya, just listen." His voice cracked. "I am done listening," I said pleasantly. "I hope the Chevron apartment is comfortable. You've certainly paid enough for it." I hung up. Then I opened a WhatsApp group, his curated friend circle. The 40 people at the birthday dinner, the ones who had laughed at that table, the ones who had heard the words and said nothing. I added every single one of them. I posted 3 things: the company documents showing the fraudulent entities, the expense records showing 2 years of apartment payments, the photographs. No caption, no explanation, no paragraph about how I felt or what it meant, just evidence. Then I left the group. Let them have the conversation without me. The collapse was not quiet. I want you to know that. It was not the dignified, behind closed doors kind of ending that people write about in books. It was loud, it was public, it was exactly what it deserved. Within 60 days, BC's legal team had unwound every entity Roman had structured, every fraudulent document reversed, every operational right returned to its original holder, me. The lawyer, Temi's cousin, Zara's cousin, lost his practicing license. A formal complaint had been filed with the Nigerian Bar Association, and the outcome was swift and final. Roman's new friends, the ones he had carefully constructed because they knew too much, saw the news online. One of them, a man named Ben, who knew Roman since secondary school, posted something that got shared widely. He wrote, "Some men spend years borrowing a woman's life and calling it their own glow. Then they wonder why everything goes dark the moment she stops shining on them." We tried to tell him. He didn't want to hear. Someone tagged Roman's LinkedIn profile in the comments. The post ran for 6 days, 4,000 shares. The comments did not stop. I saw it because someone forwarded it to me. I read it once. I did not share it. I did not comment. But I will confess, alone in my office, in my building, with my name on the door, I smiled. Just once, briefly. Then I went back to my spreadsheets. That Sunday morning, in my yellow dress, with my cold tea by the window, I thought about everything that had happened, and I felt remarkably, honestly, completely fine. Not happy in the way people expect you to be after a war. Happy in the way you feel when a long, expensive problem is finally solved. Clean, clear, purposeful. I had not won a fight. I had closed a bad investment. The distinction matters. Roman looked at my life and saw an opportunity. That was his right. People assess what they see, but he made one critical miscalculation. He thought that because I had opened the door, I had handed over the keys. He thought that because I loved him, I had stopped being the woman who built everything in that house from the ground up. He forgot that the ground was mine. He forgot that the architect never really leaves the building. He called me a gold digger in front of 40 people. Baby, I was never digging. I am the gold. I am the mine. I am the deed, the title, the foundation, and the finish. He built his whole ego on my empire. And I let him until I didn't. My company is 3 times the size it was when Roman entered my life. Not because of what happened, partly because of it. Losing him meant losing the weight of someone else's image. It meant every decision in my company was mine again. Every handshake in my own name. Every contract earned without someone else taking credit in the room after I left. The Agungu project closed at twice the projected value. Marcos called it our best work. I agreed. I still wear yellow sometimes, not because of that morning, just because it's my color. I have not remarried. I have not needed to. I spend my evenings the way I used to spend them before Roman. Quietly, with work I love and a life that is full in the ways that actually matter. Some mornings I sit by that window and think about the dinner party. The swirled glass, the lowered voice, the 40 people who laughed. And I think about the woman sitting 3 seats away who picked up her water and took a slow sip and kept her face completely still and filed it all away. I am glad I was that woman. Not because of the revenge. Anyone can revenge. That is the easy part. But because in that moment, when the easiest thing in the world would have been to stand up and cause a scene and let my emotions drive the car, I chose strategy over spectacle. I chose to be the architect, not the explosion. That choice, more than any frozen account or legal filing or WhatsApp group document drop or hypertensive hospital admission, no man gets to take that from us. Now, not ever, not again. Thank you so much for watching. What did this story teach you? Drop your thoughts and your city below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.